I am a 32-year-old male engaged to my 29-year-old female fiancée. When we first met, we fell in love, had lots in common, and saw ourselves in a happy relationship. She originally lived by herself, and I lived with my family, but we would always be together. About 2 years into our relationship, we decided it was best for her to move in with my family because we lived a far distance from each other, and it got to the point where she would sleep over at my house all the time. Because she was paying rent without even staying at her place, we decided it was the right move. As our relationship progressed, I noticed a lot of differences between us. She has obsessive-compulsive disorder and would be very demanding about certain things that I didn't care about. I was not allowed to sit on a bench outside or touch certain things, such as a picnic bench, because it would bother her. Eventually, she compromised a bit, and it got a little better, but she would still get upset about small things such as wearing my outside clothes on the bed or not washing my hands to her standards after eating a meal. She doesn't have the best financial situation, which also influenced her to move in with us to save money, and she is in debt with loans. On the other hand, I have a good paying job, have zero debt, and take care of us for the most part financially, including food, trips, and more. She had an hurtful ex-boyfriend who was charged with domestic abuse, and she also has poor relationships with her mother. She often speaks about how she was never allowed any freedom and was constantly yelled at and criticized by her mom growing up, which is why she moved out by herself at a young age. They seem to have an okay relationship to date. Her mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer a few years back, so there's a lot going on in her personal life. Being her boyfriend, I do my best to support her. However, I've found that she has anger issues and cannot control her emotions. There have been countless times when we've gone out with my friends, and she embarrasses me by being upset about something and will scream and yell at me. She is the type of person that cannot control her emotions. I feel that she is an hurtful partner and will yell and scream at me in my parents' household, in front of my family, and she cannot stop. I try to remove myself from the situation, and she will follow me to another room, get in my face, and continue to yell and scream. She will argue with me for hours, even into the next day, and won't stop. She is very manipulative and will blame these actions on me by saying I'm not showing her sufficient love or support, and I always tell her I can't support her if she is constantly yelling and harassing me. It is even worse when alcohol is involved. On one occasion at a hotel, she yelled at me so much that security had to come and threatened to call the police on us. We recently got into a huge argument where I had to call her brother to calm her down. My parents were also involved, where she spoke so rudely about me and said a lot of critical things to my parents about how we were raised. She told me my family was weird and also said rude things about my brothers who live in the household. I recently proposed to her in May as we plan for our wedding next year, but I don't feel comfortable anymore. I don't feel like I love her. She does not dress up for me anymore, and I don't feel attracted to her anymore. I believe she shows traits of being bipolar. She's an amazing person, but when her emotions take over, there is no control. When we argue like this, the next day she expects us to go back to normal, while I can't move on from what I have had to experience with her. Now for an update. She recently attributed her actions to premenstrual dysphoric disorder and stress and is seeking a therapist while considering taking antidepressants. She apologized for her behavior and acknowledged what happened. My issue is that this is not the first or second time. This experience has happened literally hundreds of times, and I've given her so many chances to fix this, and she's failed to do so. I told her she crossed a huge line this time, and it's hard for me to cross back over that line. I love her, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I brought her into my family, and now I don't know what to do. We've been together for 5 years, and we have scheduled an appointment for couples therapy, but I'm at the point where I feel there's someone else out there with whom I can be attracted, someone who will treat me better and has established a better foundation for themselves. Another burden I face is that if we break up, she cannot afford to pay rent due to increased rent costs compared to her last place, and she would refuse to stay with her family due to their past relationship and experiences. I am labeled as the bad guy because I am kicking her out if we were to break up. I really don't know what to do. I love her when she's not exhibiting these characteristics, but I know her history of anger and manipulation, if not fixed, will cause me problems if we get married and plan to have kids. If she acts this way in my family's house, I'm scared to see her behavior if we lived alone. If you have been in a similar situation, please let me know your thoughts. I know I said a lot of harsh stuff to paint a picture about her, but she is a good person, and I wish she didn't have this aggressive and hostile side to her, which may be a result of her past traumas in her life. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your plan is to marry your aggressor? That is a bad plan. Also, I don't believe she can't control her emotions. I believe she is choosing to do what she is doing. She is hurtful to you because she believes there will be no consequence for her actions. So far, it looks like she's right. Honestly, zero concerns given about her financial situation. Maybe she should have thought about that before being hurtful. No idiots here, man. She's not a good person. I don't believe in that whole, well, this person treats other people poorly, but really they're a good person. No, they're not. A good person, by definition, does not abuse others. I would recommend therapy for you with a therapist experienced with victims of domestic violence. She has verbally abused you hundreds of times. She humiliates you in front of your friends, which I do not, for 1 second believe is due to loss of control, and screams at you for hours at a time. You live in your family's home, where you could have asked her to leave at literally any time. Not only that, you asked her to marry you. What, so you could be abused for the rest of your life? I truly do not understand why you did that. You have really disturbingly low standards of how it is okay to treat you. Well, she's not always hurtful is not the standard. The standard is she hurtful at all? There is no such thing as an acceptable amount of domestic abuse. Comment 2. I recently proposed to her in May as we plan for our wedding next year, but I don't feel comfortable anymore. Anymore? I don't understand why you ever felt comfortable with her. She sounds exhausting to be with. Why did you even propose to her knowing what kind of person she is? I love her when she's not upset. Oh my God. I love her when she's not upset. Really? Really? Do not get married to this person. She has all kinds of issues and is not working towards fixing them. You should have split from her long ago. Now, for the update. 2 days after the big fight with Olivia, we go to our first couples therapy session. I was dreading it. Not because I think therapy is bad or anything, but just because I knew it would be super awkward. We walk into the office and the therapist starts going through the usual stuff, like explaining what she does and what couples therapy is all about. She asks us to share why we're there, and right away, Olivia jumps in, saying it's because I'm not supporting her enough. Just like that, she puts me on blast. I wasn't prepared for this. My heart starts racing, and I'm just sitting there, feeling super stressed. I keep my mouth shut. I want her to get it all out, but inside I'm like, are you really doing this right now? After the session ends, I tell Olivia I need to go to the bathroom, and she takes a call in the waiting area. I overhear her talking about plans for a getaway with her brother. I don't catch all the details, but it sounds like a lot more than just a casual hangout. Once we're home, I confront her about the call. She acts all innocent, saying it was nothing and I'm being paranoid, but immediately we start arguing. It's like she can't even talk to me without turning it into a fight. I decide to reach out to her brother, hoping to clarify what's going on. I text him, but of course, no response. The next day, I'm getting ready for work, and I see Olivia packing a suitcase. I ask her where she's going, and she snaps, saying it's none of my business. That's when I decide to check her phone while she's in the shower. I know I shouldn't, but I feel like I have to. I find a series of texts with her brother discussing a weekend trip, but there are also texts that hint at something more. It's not just a brother-sister trip, that's for sure. Later that week, my mom invites me over for dinner, and Olivia declines, saying she has plans. During dinner, my mom casually mentions how Olivia hasn't been around much lately. That just adds to my worries. After dinner, I call Olivia's brother again and actually reach him this time. I ask about the trip, and he accidentally reveals that Olivia planned the whole thing without telling him about me. This just keeps getting better. When Olivia comes home late that night, I confront her again. She gets all defensive, saying I don't trust her and I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I try to have a serious talk about our relationship, but she just storms out of the room. Over the next few days, our arguments become more frequent and intense. I'm losing my mind. I decide I need a break from all this, so I go to my parents' house for a few days, just to clear my head. When I come back home, I'm determined to confront Olivia about her behavior. I find her in our living room with her brother, just laughing and looking all cozy together. When he sees me, he leaves, and I can feel this intense wave of anger building up in me. I demand to know what's going on, and she tries to play it off, but I push for the truth. Finally, she admits she's been feeling overwhelmed and was planning to leave for a weekend trip without telling me. So that's what all this was about. I tell her that I'm going to be moving out for a while to give us both some space. She panics, begging me to reconsider. I stand firm, saying I can't continue in a relationship built on secrets. In a fit of frustration, she throws a glass against the wall, shattering it. I can't take it anymore, so I leave the apartment with just the clothes on my back. This whole thing has been a nightmare. After a week, I find a small apartment. It's not much, but at least it's mine. One evening, I get a text from Olivia asking for another chance. At first, I'm tempted to respond, but then I decide to post an update on Reddit instead. I just need to share my side of the story. The whole thing has been a mess, and I hope I made the right choice. To answer a few questions, the trip Olivia was planning with her brother was for the weekend after the therapy session. She had intended to leave Friday night and return Sunday. The texts between them implied a romantic getaway, which was troubling. No cheating has occurred yet, but the trust is broken. Am I the idiot for staying with my emotionally abusive boyfriend even after he called me ugly in public? Today, while we were out and about, we were waiting in line, and I made a face at my boyfriend. It wasn't necessarily an ugly face. I just stuck my lips out and widened my eyes a little bit. He looked at me and said, "You're ugly." I was shocked, so I said, "I'm ugly?" He tried to backtrack and say, "Well, no, that face you're making is ugly." So I just said, "Oh," and excused myself to the bathroom because I felt tears coming. We've been together for 4 years now, and we've had a lot of problems, like him nearly cheating and watching porn every single time I would go to work at 6 a.m. and then when I would fall asleep at night. I saw the history and timestamps. He was in a weird Discord corn group, followed corn pages on Reddit, and his Facebook and TikTok were filled with thirst traps, which is super embarrassing to me. Anyway, I think we worked through that, but then we started having other problems about him getting physical with me. While he would never hit me, he would push me and be rough with me in general. To him, he was play fighting. Mind you, he is much bigger than I am, hitting me and putting his weight on me, etc., and restraining me when I would try to leave the house during heated arguments. There's also been a bit of threats. I was going to have a septoplasty to fix my breathing, and about a month before surgery, we got into an argument, and he put his hands on me. So I hit him in the arm. He said if I ever hit him again, he was going to hurt me so badly that I would need more than a nose surgery. Anyway, all of this that has been brewing for the past couple of years has had a huge impact on my self-esteem. So when I heard him call me ugly today, my heart just broke. I've been dealing with some skin issues due to severe allergies, and I have never felt so ugly in my life, which I cried to him about a couple of months ago. There was no point in telling him because he is the most emotionally unsupportive man I've ever talked to, even when we're not arguing. I almost forgot to mention the emotional impact he has on me, constant name-calling and telling me to shut up all the time. So he knows how I feel about myself currently. Am I overreacting? He never apologized for what he said, even if it was an accident and he said the wrong thing. I came out from the bathroom and my eyes were slightly red from crying, and all he said was, "What's wrong with your eyes?" I never thought I would post something on here since I try so hard to work out my problems with him in private, but he's not talking to me since he knows I'm upset. I've been talking to my mom about moving back in with her because of how he is treating me, since it's having a huge impact on my mental health. I'm just scared, and I don't know why. I feel so lost and heartbroken. Now, for a few comments before the update. Insults are what children and unkind people do. Sounds like you need someone who thinks you are beautiful. He doesn't like you and is treating you poorly. Break up with him. Now for the update. I'm back with another update on my life. So, yesterday was just a complete mess, and I needed some time away from my boyfriend. I really needed to clear my head, so I decided to spend some quality time with my mom. She totally understands my situation and knows how bad my boyfriend can be. We went to this cute little coffee shop that I used to visit with her when I was a kid. It was so nice to be back there for a bit. The atmosphere was cozy, and it felt good to escape the chaos of my life, even if just for a little while. We got our drinks and sat down to chat. I started telling her all about the horrible argument my boyfriend and I had. My mom was so concerned. She said I really need to think about my options. I've been talking to her about moving back home for a while now, and she said I'd be welcome anytime. My boyfriend has been so emotionally draining. I know I shouldn't let him get to me, but it's just so hard. My mom also noticed that my boyfriend has a pattern of belittling me. I told her it's not just this time. He's been doing it for a while, and she said she noticed it too. We finished our drinks, and then we headed to the nearby market to pick up some groceries. I love going there with my mom. It's always a nice experience. While we were shopping, I ran into a family friend. She asked how my boyfriend was doing. I hesitated for a second, but then I gave her a quick summary of what's been going on. I mentioned the time he physically pushed me during our last argument, and she seemed really concerned. She even told me about a similar experience she had with someone else. I really appreciated her sharing that with me. It felt good to know I wasn't alone. Later that day, I went back home and found my boyfriend on the couch. He acted like nothing had happened the day before, which was so frustrating. I went to cook us some dinner, and he joked about my cooking skills. I just brushed it off because I didn't want to start anything, but he just kept making these light comments that felt so dismissive. I just stayed quiet, not wanting to escalate anything. After dinner, he suggested that we go out with friends this weekend, but I declined. He seemed annoyed and asked if I was still upset about our argument. I told him I just needed some time to think, and he rolled his eyes at me. His attitude was just so infuriating. The next day, I woke up to a text from my mom. She invited me to a family dinner that weekend, and I totally accepted. I really need to clear my head and gain some perspective on everything. My mom and my family always make me feel better. On the day of the family dinner, my boyfriend insisted on coming with me. I wasn't sure about it, but I didn't want to start an argument, so I just let him come. When we got there, my dad made a toast to family, and it just made me smile so much. It felt so good to be around my family and have a moment like that. During dinner, my brother casually asked when my boyfriend and I were getting engaged. My boyfriend laughed and said we were still just enjoying our relationship. His tone was just so dismissive. I felt a little uncomfortable, but thankfully my mom changed the subject. After dinner, I went outside for some fresh air. My boyfriend followed me and accused me of ruining the mood. He said I needed to lighten up, which just made me more upset. When we went inside, my aunt pulled me aside and asked about my relationship. I told her a little about what was going on, and she expressed concern about my boyfriend's behavior. It felt nice to talk to her and have her support. When we got home later that night, my boyfriend was really upset about the family dinner. He said he didn't feel welcome. I tried to explain my family's dynamics, but he interrupted me and started raising his voice. I just couldn't deal with it, so I walked away and went to bed, leaving him fuming in the living room. The next morning, I woke up to find him gone. He left me a note saying he needed some time to think. I'm just so over this. I don't know what to do. Edit. My mom has always been supportive, and my family knows my boyfriend has been emotionally hurtful. The family friend had a similar experience, which made me realize I'm not the only one. I spoke to my aunt about his behavior. I'm considering moving back home, but I'm still unsure. Am I the idiot for telling my lazy brother-in-law to get off his ass and find a job. So my wife, 30 years old, and I, 32 years old, live in a hotel room with her brother, 28 years old, and his fiancée, 30 years old, along with our son. It's a little cramped, but we work with it as best as we can. I picked up an extra job that I love more than my regular one and have been working there for over a year. My wife works there too as much as she can, but health problems prevent her from working as much as she would like. Her brother's fiancé also has a lot of medical issues that prevent her from being able to work at any normal job, but is looking for work-at-home jobs she can do in the room. The problems arose about 3 to 4 months ago when his managers started retaliating against him for going over their heads to their manager about some of the things they were doing at the store. I don't remember everything, but some of it was not ringing up some of their buddies' drinks or drinking while on the clock and not sanitizing or cleaning properly. He tried to bring it up during a store meeting, specifically the cleaning issue and some other things that had the employees looking at the managers sideways. Well, it didn't take long for them to start targeting him, specifically shift-wise. They gave him fewer and fewer hours until they just stopped scheduling him altogether under the guise that other employees were complaining about him, and the doctor's note he got for his knee, which he was having some pain in, didn't clear him for the bar specifically. When it started, he contacted the district manager who said he'd look into it, and we hoped he would handle it or just transfer him out of that store and closer to where we live. Neither happened. So after a month of not working and waiting, he filed for unemployment and started to look for another job. It's been about 2 to 3 months since then, and so far, nothing has changed. He still doesn't have a job, and the unemployment has been taking forever to approve, partially because they misspelled his name, and he had to jump through a lot of hoops to get them to fix it. As many of you can already tell, the major strain of financial responsibility is resting on me, which I wouldn't mind if I had any money to show for it. But it's almost always gone to bills. My wife and I are barely able to go out together on dates or anything. In fact, the last time we went out was over 2 weeks ago, and before that, it had been at least 2 or 3 months prior. My main issue is that he doesn't do anything. Aside from sometimes looking for jobs or dealing with unemployment, he doesn't clean, at least not without being asked multiple times. And even then, he does it long after being asked. He rarely cooks and spends, especially recently, a lot of time playing on his fiancée's laptop or watching TV shows on it. It's infuriating, to say the least. He's there all day and can't keep the hotel room clean, or picked up at the very least. He can't clean the dishes, so there isn't a sink full of them. His fiancée and my wife at least make an effort to clean and sweep when they can, but I honestly don't remember the last time he picked up a single piece of trash without being asked to. I want to give him a deadline to see if that'll help motivate him to get it in gear and do something, but I don't know if my wife would stick with it or agree to it. He's really the last person in her family she talks to at all. She has almost no relationship with either side of her family. Her dad is in another country, essentially with another family, and her mom lives in a homeless shelter right now. Her little brother is all she has left, and she's been looking out for him since she was 12 or 13. I know it would break her to do this, but I'm tired of it. I'd hope at best it would motivate him enough to apply and call and do whatever it takes to get a job and start contributing. At worst, I'd hope that it would be less stressful and a bit cheaper, food-wise at least, for just the 3 of us. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You just have to rip off the Band-Aid. Tell her enough is enough. They are not our responsibility, and they have no sense of urgency. We have no life and no privacy due to paying for them. I am unwilling to keep supporting them. As far as kicking them out, well, if it's a hotel, just check out and rent another room. Then it's the hotel's problem to get rid of them. Comment 2. Why do you all have to live in one room? Why can't you and your wife just move into another room with only one bed and stop paying for them? Just do what you need for you, your wife, and your son. Why would you not be at least prioritizing your son? This situation is not right for him. living in one room with two other adults who don't clean. Now, for the update. 2 weeks after I made my last post, my wife called me while I was working my new second job. She told me her brother's fiance had been admitted to the hospital for a severe infection. I felt really worried. I rushed to the hospital, and the first person I saw was my wife, who looked completely distraught. Her brother was pacing nervously in the waiting room. Seeing them just made my heart ache. We hugged, and I tried to reassure her that everything would be okay, but deep down, I was worried too. The brother pulled me aside and told me he had been avoiding telling their dad about the situation because he was scared of how he'd react. I could see the fear in his eyes, so I didn't push him on it. After a while, the fiancé's parents showed up, and let me tell you, the vibe in that waiting room got super tense. Everyone was worried, and no one knew what to say. I felt out of place, but I stayed with my wife and her brother for support. After what felt like forever, a doctor finally came out to speak with us. He explained that the fiancé would need surgery to remove the infected tissue. The brother just broke down in tears, feeling helpless. I tried to console him, but I could see how much this was tearing him apart. We all just stood there, trying to process the news. I suggested we all stay at the hospital overnight to support the fiancé, but her brother was eager to leave and grab some food. I know we were all exhausted, but I thought it was important to be there for her. The brother came back with takeout, and we were relieved to find out the fiancé had been moved to recovery. It felt like a small win in the midst of everything. While we were waiting for her to wake up, I thought it was a good time to bring up the idea of moving out of the hotel for some financial stability. I figured we could use this situation as a reason to get him to agree to it, but he dismissed the idea right away. He argued that we needed to stay together during these tough times. I get that, but I just wanted to talk about our options. The next day, when the fiancé woke up, she immediately asked about her job. She was really worried about the medical bills piling up. The brother promised to take care of everything, but I had my doubts. The fiancé's parents and some other family members visited her, and I felt so out of place. They were all discussing her recovery, and I just stood there, unsure of my role in all of this. It was like I was an outsider looking in, even though I was supposed to be family. That weekend, we all gathered for dinner at the hospital cafeteria, and the atmosphere was just tense. It was like everyone was walking on eggshells. When someone mentioned looking for a job, the brother got defensive. He insisted he was working on it, but I knew he wasn't. I tried to suggest some job resources, but I just got resistance from him and his family. Later, I decided it was time to confront the brother privately. I asked him about his plans moving forward, and he just got angry. He accused me of not understanding the struggles their family was going through. I tried to explain my perspective, but he wasn't having it. The conversation escalated, and he just stormed out of the room. I was left standing there, feeling frustrated and defeated. A week later, the fiancé was discharged from the hospital, but her brother's attitude had changed. He seemed more distant, like he was shutting us out even more. I found out he had been spending most of his time playing video games instead of looking for jobs. I was so annoyed because he needed to be doing something productive. I told my wife that I wanted to have a serious talk about our living situation, and she agreed. We both knew it would be difficult, especially with her brother around. At the family dinner that weekend, the talk turned to finances, and the brother openly criticized me for suggesting that he should leave. I calmly explained that we couldn't continue to support him without some contribution from his end. He just accused me of abandoning him during his toughest times, and I was done at that point. I didn't want to keep having this same conversation, so I left the table, feeling defeated and frustrated by the lack of support from my wife. Later that night, the brother came to me and asked if we could put our differences aside for the fiancé's recovery. He seemed genuine, so I agreed. A few days later, the fiancé reached out to me and expressed her gratitude for our support. During our conversation, she revealed that she had been thinking about starting a crowdfunding campaign to help with her medical bills. I shared my concerns about the brother's lack of responsibility, and she surprisingly agreed to speak to him about it, After their talk, the brother finally agreed to look for jobs and offered to contribute more at home. It felt like a small win, but I knew we still had a long road ahead of us. To answer a few questions, the fiancé's hospitalization was due to an infected surgical site that required immediate attention. The brother and I have always had a supportive relationship, but the stress from their family issues strained it. My wife and I have been married for 5 years and have generally been on the same page about family matters, but this situation has tested us. I suggested the crowdfunding campaign idea because their family was hesitant to help financially, and I thought it might encourage them to contribute. The brother has since been actively job hunting, which has alleviated some tension. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.